Hey everybody, it's Zektown. Welcome to another Storyboard episode where today we're going to do something a little bit different. Something that typically don't do a ton of. As something actually I've never really done. It is making my own app assets. And tonight we're going to even kind of talk about how to even go about doing that. It's something that I think is going to be super important and should be something that you can use for your own games, especially if you make digital maps like I do. It really helps for all the digital stuff that we have going on here at Top. Some people kind of own that word, and it's just another, feather to put in your cap, as it were. And so we're going to start by doing just some old school as it gets, some pencil and paper drawing. Should be a ton of fun. It's really just going to be a chill session. It's Friday, so if you're in the chat, tell me. Oh shit, that background music is probably crushing your ears. I apologize, everybody. Holy shiitake mushrooms. How is that? I need to I just added this this one in here. Let me go into my advanced audio settings really quick. I gotta make sure that I have the music through my output so I can kind of balance it with my own voice. See, even that's a little too loud even. So let me drop that around there. That should probably be better. Zero, thank you so much. Constantly saving the day on my streams. I appreciate you so much for that. But yeah, we're gonna get into it here. Let's get into that. You might be looking at my screen right now, and you might be wondering, why do you have Google Maps open? You strange guy. And why do I have multiple? I don't need that one. Thank you, Zero. Always keeping me honest. Appreciate you. But you might be wondering why I have the mountains of Montana. And it's because when making maps, we typically don't, make them where you're looking at it as if it was a painting with your eye level being going horizontally on an X, Y, and Z axis. Whenever we're making maps, we're doing a bird's eye aerial view, almost always. You can get into isometric maps, and that's a whole other ball game. I don't mess with those too much. And if I do, it's because I have purchased 2D assets off of a Humble Bundle, and they're for 2D scrolling games that I will cut and put into my own maps. Something I've toyed with in the past, and it's a fun thing to do. But the point of tonight is we're gonna kind of take it from square one. I have some things in the works right now. A lot of irons in the fire, as they say. And part of this whole process that I'm going through is making my own assets to use in maps that I create. There's reasons for that, and I want to be able to create something that is all me, essentially, without the mapping software itself. Oh, what's up, God's Envy? Welcome to the chat. Happy Friday. Hopefully you're enjoying a great and scrumptious dinner on this Friday night. I know you're always cooking up something good or ordering some amazing takeout from somewhere in Philly. So, happy Friday. Where was I? But yeah, so we're talking about aerial maps. Google Maps is a fantastic resource for this, right? See, I knew you would have something good. Awesome. I almost had steak tonight, but instead, my partner and I decided that we were going to have Chinese food. So we ordered from one of our favorite takeout places, and I had Kung Po chicken, which was fantastic. I'm glad. Glad that you had a good dinner tonight as well. You need it. Working hard all week. We all are working hard all week, and if you work on the weekends, you're working even then too. So you deserve it even more. You probably deserve a couple drinks. I might be able to get one of those here in a little while, but we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, Google Maps, or like what is the other one that you can use? Raise a glass to freedom. I suppose so. You know what happens though? Then you end up in a duel, and then you have to say a bunch of things for the 10 dual commandments, and then you have to like become like the secretary of the treasury, and then you have to make a bunch of other political statements. It just becomes this whole big thing. I would much rather just make some maps. Be more like George Washington and be more of a cartographer in this sense, rather than the Hamilton of the group. Or even worse, the Aaron Burr. Fun fact, let me know in the chat who is actually telling the story of Hamilton. If you've watched the production, whether on Disney Plus or in a theater, you should be able to answer this because of the closing scene. So if you're still thinking about this, go to that last scene and some of the last words of the show and type in your answer. But getting back to making maps and chilling, Google Maps is a fantastic resource because everything is in aerial. It's so wonderful, and you can turn on all these different layers. So like say you want to do more of like a oh man, I gotta zoom out pretty far here and let it load. My computer is not liking that. Oh no, I lost. Oh, there we go. But like you can, like if you're making like a large scale area map as well, it's nice to get inspiration sometimes from Google Maps, because you can see like how mountain chains form. You know, like these are the Rockies and stuff coming down into here, and then going down into Colorado and everything else. So it's kind of cool that you can use a resource for free. I like to do that kind of stuff because, yeah, Eliza is telling the story. Good job, God's Envy. And if you had to go watch that, you don't gotta tell me. It's fine. I appreciate you typing it in. But the cool thing about the stuff that I do on the channel is I try to like keep it as free as possible for you. That way, like, there's like no barrier to entry other than your own imagination. I sometimes, you know, that's a bar you gotta raise, but yeah, you gotta be willing to put in the work, and part of that is, you know, working your imagination muscles. They are real, and doing small, like little 5-minute exercises every day will help you get better at using your imagination. That is a real thing. And part of that today is going to be drawing. But circling back, I like using as minimal of a cost in the software or the products that I use on this channel, so that way others can do it as well. And it's my own process because I'm kind of cheap when it comes to this stuff. I spend too much money on other stuff. There's not enough money in the world, right? Or at least in my pocket. But that being said, let's take a look at some of these like outwashes and stuff, because what you're gonna get in some of these are some beautiful looking, very pixelated trees. This is some older imagery. Let's look for something more populated to get like a better, more updated map. So I think before I was over near Bozeman because Bozeman's population in Montana has been like exploding. Yeah, Billings is here. Bozeman is... Where the fuck is Bozeman? I'm not from Montana, so bear with me here. But anyways, you get closer to like a national forest, and there's usually some fairly good imagery that, again, is free that you can use. Important factoid of the day. And sometimes what's also cool is when you go to some of these places on Google Maps, like say you go to Diamond Gulch, you can get photos. And I think this is more general, like Montana photos. But if you were to like type in Diamond Gulch, Montana, you should get some photos in there. We'll let Firefox do its thing. And then we'll get to drawing. Just because, like, you know, even because we're drawing them in aerial view, it's sometimes nice to have a reference that is still in, like, that 2D plane of, like, a painting or a photograph that you would take. Just to, like, you know, help you get your mind working and, like, what you're looking at versus what you're visualizing on the top down. But anyways, this is the Yogo Creek. It's a pretty zigzaggy creek. Looks pretty fun. Looks like it has exactly what we're looking for, though, which is vegetation. I wanted to start doing some basic like forest assets, and some of that is just, you know, going through the imagery and looking at what the tops of the trees look like, or looking at what the bushes look like, looking at how the rivers meander naturally, and what kind of debris you also find in these rivers. Like, a lot of the stuff in Montana is like from mountain snowmelt. So sometimes when there's a lot of snow, and I think this past year Montana had like record levels of snow for a change, and so the rivers have been like blowing out in terms of all of the debris that they're also carrying with them. So in the imagery that I'm bringing up on Google Maps, you can see, you know, there's a lot of like fallen timber and stuff. So it might be a good idea that when you're doing these types of drawings, to think about the other stuff that you're going to be putting in your map in terms of assets. And that includes like downed trees or stumps or boulders or other things, you know, and all of that is what we're going to try to draw tonight. I'm going to start with pencil, as you can see in my handy dandy mini cam. And then I just have some basic white computer paper, 8.5 by 11. Cool thing to do is you start drawing, do it with pencil, so that way you can ink it. And then after you ink it, that's whenever you would take the next step of scanning it in. And if you're trying to go the free route, which I will probably be doing, and I got to relearn this program because it's been like a decade since I've used it, like something like GIMP. There are some like alternate Photoshop or Adobe programs out there that are relatively cheap. Like, you might be able to get it for like $20 during a humble bundle, but you gotta like be patient and hit that bundle when it happens. Otherwise you'll miss it for potentially the whole year, and you gotta wait till next year. But check Humble Bundle, you know, as often as you can, just to see what kind of stuff changes. And if you've been on that website, you'll know that there's usually like a 20-day life on each bundle. So you can kind of gauge, like every like 2 weeks, kind of check in, see what's changed, see what's still there, see what might be clocking out sooner than later in case you wanted to buy something. That's what I do, and that's what I recommend others do, because I've been able to find a lot of really awesome music, art, and graphic and assets and stuff like that way. and even software you can find that way. Like a lot of music DAWs I've like been able to pick up on the cheap with a bunch of different samples and stuff because of Humble Bundle, which is fun. So, looking at Montana again though, we have it here, and yeah, nope, definitely a camera. This is the close up of the drawing stuff, which is, you know, another thing that I'm kind of nervous showing y'all because I don't think that I'm a great artist. I have some friends that might even be in this stream right now who are way better at art than I am. So if I offend y'all, I'm very sorry. I'm doing my best. um, but let's get drawing. So you can see in some of these like more high alpine forests and stuff like that, that you have a lot of like conifers and pine trees. And, you know, you can kind of see one of them right here in the imagery. So what I'm going to do is start drawing like the general shape of what that looks like. And from there, we'll start maybe fleshing out some of the boughs of the top of the tree. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the top. You always have kind of like where the pine tree is like growing up to the tip. That's going to be like your good starting point. And then if you're just kind of looking at the general shape of this thing, you see that it has like an amorphous kind of shape. So it has like this like, it has this thing going on where it kind of just has, you know, the round piney shape. And then what you really see with like the shadows and stuff of Google Earth is like these boughs. Well, however you say that word. It's Friday and I don't really care. But you can kind of just like see like how they come out, and they're kind of random. Like you'll see one there, and then you'll get like a lot of like shade in there, and then you'll get another one, and then you get another one. And so on and so forth. And then where we're filling in this kind of fluffy bubble of pine tree, you're going to fill in other layers that might not be as big. And I guess that's kind of like a pine tree from like above, right? So then you can kind of just start adding a little bit more definition to some of these. You can start bisecting the little points that you made, and that would kind of be where you're really kind of dictating oh no, it's not a good eraser. Well, there goes all the work. But it's okay. That's why we're here, having fun, learning how to do something new. And you just like start over, unfortunately, with some of those. But then you kind of bisect them, and that's really going to be where your branches are, right? And then you can kind of start adding a couple branches off of that to kind of show that like that's what's really happening with your tree. And you kind of have a pine tree at that point. Remember that with something like this, we are eventually going to be adding color. And I believe some of the stuff that you can do in like the digital products in post is have brushes, and sometimes you'll be able to like add brush streaks that look a little bit you know, botanical in nature, and it'll be able to kind of like fill in a lot of that stuff for you. I mean, if you're gonna do it one strand at a time, that's gonna be a different story. But you know, for what we're doing right now, this is gonna be a-okay. So that's like one. Let's do like another one just to get some diversity in your trees. So this one, I'm gonna have a couple smaller things coming out, and then coming out with some more. And what's nice is then you can kind of like fill in where it looks to make it kind of rounded and stuff, you know? Or maybe you want to get rid of a couple to make it look like something broke some of these. For example, maybe you have an owl bear, and the owl bear came through and ripped down a bunch of branches. Well, now you're going to need a tree that has had an attack recently or something like slammed into it, and you need to get rid of some branches. Usually when you're making maps and stuff like that, you don't get damaged trees unless you've probably specifically bought an art pack for that. So like what I guess we could do right now is kind of start with our normal tree, pine tree center, and then kind of start doing the lines for that. But then really you want to like have it like so you have like some stuff coming out of there, but you want to leave a bunch of empty space because that's where it has been damaged. And again, we're just adding like a bunch of lines to kind of show that there's like different branches coming out from this thing, and you can layer it to show exactly how thick of a tree you want. And again, we're leaving this whole chunk out, and maybe with this particular asset, when we box it out, it has a broken branch. And what we can do then is start adding little small branches that are going to get detailed in. And again, this is also a scale that I'm probably going to have small trees. These might be like assets even for more of like a world map or like a regional map that you can start like filling in at like the city level, not necessarily a battle map level. A battle map level you might want to have like even more concentrated, or not concentrated, but more fine detail work on something like that, because it's going to be bigger, right? Like it's going to be something where it's going to be 256 pixels per 5 by 5 foot grid square kind of a thing. So you're going to be able to have that ability to assign all those different colors and details to that particular piece of line work. Let's start drawing some bushes though. So again, we're gonna like go through all this later and, you know, add the brush strokes, add the green fill, add the brown stroke to this to show that it's like an extra branch popping out. This is like a little rock that's like next to this that just happens to be there. so we can like fill that in with like gray or whatever we want to later in post. The point now is to get like the rough idea sketched out, and then through the process of refinement, you're going to ink it, and those will be your hard lines that you can, or take an eraser to and make it nice and clean. And then when you scan it in, you can basically remove the white, and then you're left with like a line shape. And then from that, you can kind of start creating extra layers of how you're going to fill in that piece. And that's how you make digital art, so I've been told. It's a process that I'm going to be learning, and hopefully I can share that with all of y'all in stream, to make it not so scary, because I don't think it should be scary. And I think that there should be, more of a DIY approach to D&D, because I feel like in 2023, when this is being recorded, that there's so much already available content that sometimes people, myself included, fall into the trap of just using what's available. And what's available might not be what your mind is creating as a dungeon master. And I think it's important to be able to fully create what you envision. And also, if you ever wanted to like publish your work, like say you're an adventure writer, and you want to make some maps to go along with it, do you want to be having to constantly give credit to other people for something that you put hours and hours of your heart and soul creatively into? Or do you want to be able to, at the end of the day, say like, hey, all of this was 100% me? That's kind of where I'm at. So I hope that with tonight, you kind of can take that and see it blossom in your own work. So let's get back to it, shall we? I wish I honestly had like stolen some imagery from work, because I feel like it would just be easier sometimes. Hey, Mike TV. Welcome to the stream. I just doxed myself by accident. Hopefully none of y'all screen grab that later. Mike, I was just giving you, Mike TV, I was giving you compliments earlier. Mike TV is a friend I have in real life as well as digitally, everyone. And we recently, at a gathering, were talking about making art and the digital process that is involved with that. So a lot of those things that I was just talking about with like making different layers for what you're creating, I was inspired by Mike, as he was kind of giving me a little bit of a rundown on all of the intricacies that are involved with making digital art. Mike is a very talented artist, and his work is phenomenal. You can see it all over the place, including the Atale D20's logo, I believe. And the Natural Ones logo, like, oh my gosh, yes, 100%. Now we're in sunny California, no longer in Montana. But, I think it's fun to look at something like this, where you're going to have some of these other trees, right? We're no longer in like an alpine mountain region or alpine forest where you're going to have mostly like pine trees and other conifers. But you're going to have, I think this is just like random middle of California. Yeah. Not exactly north, but not exactly south either, right? I guess Sacramento's kind of south, or kind of central, right? Let's go to Chico. But like not the farmlands, because that's not helpful. Mendocino, famous for its trees. Hopefully none of the cartels get upset with me for blowing up their spots on Google Maps. Oh, also hi, Zendaric. Hello. I think I saw you in the chat with a bunch of hearts. That was wonderful. I hope you're enjoying your Friday as well. What did you have for dinner, Zendaric? Put it in the chat. We were talking about dinner earlier. But these also kind of look like conifers, so I kind of want to go south again. As much as Mendocino calls to me. For various reasons. Like the beautiful sights. I also had a friend in college who was from Mendocino. I went to a very hippie school. And she had been born and raised in Mendocino County. Literally ordering. What are you literally ordering right now, Zendaric? So I'm also giving labels to this stuff. Oh, tacos! That's a lot of O's there. Is that how many tacos you're ordering? Because that would be more than I can count right now. I wish you luck in eating that many tacos. Are you ordering from like a local place, or are you ordering from like Taco Bell? Which is also a local place where you can get great tacos. He has help. Authentic, baby. Taco Bell is authentic. I don't know what you're talking about. Where else are you going to get that authentic Baja Blast Mountain Dew? But yeah, look at these trees. Look at these fucking trees. How great are they? So if I wanted to do sort of something like that, call it a maple tree for lack of better terms. We're going to start with our general shape, right? So these ones are kind of easy. They're just fluffy little cloud blobs. So start just by sketching out like a general circle, right? And then as you can see, a lot of this is pretty dense, right? But if you look here, you can kind of get the shape of maybe 2 or 3 trees, but it kind of looks like one big blobby tree where my mouse's cursor is kind of pointed at. I don't need to drop a little human here. That'd be ridiculous. But I think that's going to be an important reference for us, because what it's showing me is that even within this big circle that we have here to show the large portion of the tree, you can tell like maybe this is like a little bit lighter of a section. Maybe it's a newer growth. Maybe this is, you know, newer growth popping up in this corner of the tree, but older growth here. Or maybe you're getting some of the depth in the aerial view where this is a little bit lower on the tree, so it's a little bit more shadowed. But we want to show that. We want to bring our two-dimensional drawing and really give it some depth. So what I'm going to propose here is that we kind of take a look at what we've done and then emulate nature a little bit by kind of adding in these textures and showing that there's a little bit of depth to this thing. And again, you can kind of make it wispy in the middle because that's where it's going to be most densely concentrated in terms of stuff. You have the trunk of the tree there. You have all of the branches coming off of that. Thank you, God's Envy. But yeah, So that's also part of the reason why when you look at an aerial shot, it's either super light because there's a branch coming straight up, or it's super dark because there's a lack of light that is being reflected off of the green of the leaves. So you can kind of tell like that's a shadowed spot where the tree itself has branched up and out, which is something that I'm going to show here. And, you know, I'm showing that in two ways. Two ways. I got two fingers here. You have these clumps of branches, right? And all of that is expressed by the divergence of the main trunk of the tree. Again, this is why it's important to sometimes not only work with aerial shots, but to work with whatever two-dimensional or like portrait shots would be. I don't know. Is there another way to describe that, chat? Let me know if I'm just being ridiculous with the way I'm describing things. But I'm like flip-flopping between aerial view and we'll do portrait mode for all of you Instagram, iPhone photo takers. I don't know what it is on the Galaxy. Otherwise, I would say that too. But, and the other way you can kind of show depth is by showing where it's bubbled, right? Like if I'm showing the texture of some of this tree coming here, but then I'm also showing that there's like another section of branch coming up there, you're going to get this hard defined line here, where you have things kind of meeting and sinking in on each other, in terms of like the bulbiness. That's a scientific term, the bulbiness of the tops of the trees, and it just, you know, adds a little bit more depth and shows you kind of what you're working with. And this tree is just like a little too perfectly round for me, so I'm trying to like fatten it up on a couple of the sides, get it a little bit more irregular. And there's like another there's a maple tree, or I don't know if that's exactly a maple tree, but that's what I'm calling my maple tree for right now. Let's do another one to get some more perspective. Thank you, Zero. It's kind of, yeah, like top view or like bird's eye aerial or front view versus side view. Is there a difference between front view and side view other than your perspective? Like and I don't mean perspective as in like, yeah, obviously it's a different perspective, but I mean like perspective as in which axis you're accessing. So for aerial bird's eye, you're accessing X and Y, and in side view, you're accessing probably your Z and equal parts X and Y, because that's going along your like fabric of space surface kind of a deal. So let's find some more trees to emulate here. This could be a fun one to do. It's not exactly bulbous, and I think this is like several things. Or even this one right here. This could be a fun one because it's kind of like undulating out and kind of getting blobbed into this one. Let's call this MT2 for Maple Tree 2. These ones were Pine Tree 1, Pine Tree 2, Pine Tree damaged. And this was Rock 1 and Rock 2. We're doing real well tonight, everybody. Elevation view? Yeah, so do you mean elevation view as in, can you use elevation view in a sentence for me, God's Envy? But as I'm trying to emulate this tree, let me get the basic shape, because it really kind of dips in. And then it like fans back out again. And then it does this like wavy thing. And then it comes back in again. And this is where I got to use my imagination, because I think it's running into other trees. Yeah, let's get the directions to here. And what's cool is like you can like do this shit in Google Maps to get a sense of scale too for what you're drawing. So like this is like a 45-foot tree basically, which is kind of cool. An elevation drawing is the view of a building seen from one side. It is the two-dimensional flat representation of one facade. It displays heights and the key features of the development in relation to a fixed point, such as natural ground level. That's exactly, yes. So an elevation drawing, an elevation view versus a bird's eye view is what I'll call it for tonight. Back to the task at hand. It looks like we got something going on here. And then it looks like it kind of comes out like a triangle. And comes back in. And that's where we're going to start. That's our basic shape. Now what's cool is you can really see a shadow in, or some sort of like shadowed portion of this tree. And I'm going to imagine, for the sake of the drawing, that it's like another branch that is coming out underneath, but is not as high and is not getting as much direct sunlight as you would see in this photo. So that's kind of where, like, before we had everything kind of at the same height, and then added depth by showing things that were higher than the base parts of the tree. By then just going and adding this secondary thing underneath, and then we can make it a little bit darker here because we're showing that it is below and shadowed. And another cool thing that I kind of want to try to capture with this one is you can see how it's like broken up, and just see how light is being absorbed here because it is in shadow, it is in depth. I kind of want to emulate that in a way. So in order to do that, I'm kind of drawing these not like fluffy leafy lines, like the outer, you know, outline of this thing, of the tree and its shape, but I want to show that it is, you know, kind of broken up into these, and then you can add a couple of like those bushy looking things next to it, and that kind of dictates, you know, that there's like a branch here, and then there's like space underneath of it, and then there's the rest of the stuff under on the side coming out of it. So all of this is super technical, and I'm glad y'all are sticking with me for it, because I'm not a professional artist in any way, shape, or form. I'm just a guy who likes to look at things and try to emulate it. And then again, we see like there's like a dark spot and a dark spot and a dark spot on this tree. So that kind of shows that, like, you know, there's a blended in limit to where maybe this branch is like pushing some of its leaves and stuff like that. And that's gonna be, I think, that tree. Holy shnikes, it's already 7:45. Bum 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 ba dum. Bum bum. Zendark, I need to know when your tacos come in. please, for the love of the gods, tell me, because that's important to me. Let's do another one of these trees. Ooh, this is a good one. It's kind of rectangular. It's kind of trapezoidy. So that's going to be good. I don't know. Can you guys see what I'm talking about on my little internet Google Maps inset? Or is it like hard to see compared to the rest of the screen? Because if it's too small, I will try to zoom in a little bit. But like, you start getting real pixely. So what I could also do is kind of bring this over here and be able to kind of show you what I'm talking about. This kind of highlights what I'm trying to show. So that's the tree I'm going to try to target. So if you can't clearly see that, let me know. I will try to adjust whatever I can for y'all. Including let me make this smaller so that way I can make it bigger. So let me know if that works, or if that's not helpful at all to you. And also something that I personally have been doing with these drawings tonight is whenever I draw them, I'm kind of trying to keep them as close as I can to a 1x1, and my painting craft mat that I got many years ago has 1x1 inch grids on it basically, and that's helpful for me visualizing my 5x5 grid that I will be transferring things to eventually, so I can kind of like make it as a proportion. So like for example, this tree, it's a little bit bigger than like a 1 inch by 1 inch, but like this one's falling into a 1 inch by 1 inch. This one is a little bit smaller than a 1 inch by 1 inch. But when you like make it a transparent background and everything else, you can have that reference frame of keeping the block set to 1 inch by 1 inch. And then when you transfer that over to your program later for the map making purposes, it's perfectly to scale that you designed it for initially, which is my intention in doing this. So there is like a method to the madness slightly. I think it also helps everybody that I'm left-handed. Like this is like the first time I think in the history of lefties that being left-handed has helped for a stream of some sort or anything. Let's go with MT3. So this is a cool one because like I said, it's like a trapezoid, right? So you have like this little fluff, and then you have this little fluff, and then it comes in, and then it comes out, and then it comes out again. And then there's like this little jug handle there. And then there's this thing where it comes in, and you can tell there's like an under part of a branch. And then this thing comes out like that. And then you have that going on. And then we'll just, you know, bam. Look at that. And now you have the detail there. You have your detail there for that branch that's coming in. You can show you have a little bit of depth by giving that shadowed spot. You have another like I said, like there was like this little bump of where some branches kind of are coming out, and you can like really play into that by just like thickening up your lines a little bit and drawing little holes within the tree itself. But you want to like imagine a tree that you would like to climb and spend some time in, right? But yeah, I think that's kind of a cool shape, and it's different from a lot of the other trees that you might see in a map making program. Cool. Let's do some more shit. Bum bum. You guys want to see something kind of funny? Besides this pixelated gobbledygook. I'll zoom out a little bit so it's a little bit easier to understand from a visual perspective. But you can kind of see how there's like all this like shrubbery and stuff. What is a shrub but just a very tiny little tree? So in honor of Bob Ross, let's make some happy little trees, aka bushes. And let's make them not so like hard as, or yeah, because that's going to be like the real difference here. With some of these rocks, they have like more hard angles on them. I know I'm like drawing with like all these like soft angles for the sketch, but as I get darker, I kind of finish that. And like a lot of the rock stuff, you can kind of again use reference frames from like Google Image or whatever, because a rock is a rock, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a geologist and I'm telling you this. A rock is a rock. So just like Google some boulders and start drawing what their shapes look like. I sometimes have to do that when I do lithology, so you do not have to be an artist when you do that, and you can draw a very good representation of what the rock looks like, and you know, make it digital and paint it up, and boom, now you are an artist. Yeah, there's obviously a little bit more nuance there that I'm not going over and I'm blowing past, but if you want to make your own maps and own your work, this is a great way to do it. If you're new to the stream, welcome. We are about an hour in at this point, and this is Storyboard. I've in the past interviewed people, and I've also had other guests on where we do like world building or map making sessions. But basically, this is the frame by frame into the metagame. This is like pulling back the curtain and looking into what makes a D&D or tabletop RPG game tick. I will be going back to doing the interviews at some point in the near future, but I thought that it would be a fun escape. I think that's a bad way to put it, but just like a fun slew of streams to just focus on some of my own work and making maps and getting those creative juices flowing. So if you are just joining us, welcome, and say hi in the chat. Let us know what you're having for dinner. It's Friday night and we're chilling. I got probably at least another half hour in me. Let's see what else we can draw tonight. And we'll start with some happy little trees called bushes. So the beautiful thing about a bush is it's kind of feathery and it looks like a tree, But that's it. Drew a bush. We'll add some lines to it. We'll call that B1 for bush 1. So again, if I'm keeping that within that like 1 inch range, and then I kind of, you can't really see. So if I'm keeping it within this 1 inch range that I just marked off, that's pretty awesome. And then I can do it again over here, where I can kind of keep track of where I am in space based on these little marks. Yeah, what about happy little flowers? Oh my goodness, Layla, thank you for joining us tonight. Let us draw some happy little flowers next. In fact, this bush here, guess what? Happy little flower. Happy little flower. And now it looks like it's smiling. And then when we ink them, they can be a different color. Call that bush 2. Let's do another bush, shall we? What if you're in a magical forest and you're on a plane that is very lawful good? What are your bushes going to look like, everybody? If you guessed rectangular, you're right. So let's draw like a hedge almost. And what's fun, if it doesn't look square enough for you, like for example, say it had a little bit of chaotic good in it and it wasn't super lawful, you can add a little bit of depth and round it out. And then that shows like it's coming up and curling a little bit. Now let's do more of like a square bush, because why the fuck not? Again, I have my like little 1 inch thing kind of squared off here to just help give me some scale and reference for when I'm drawing these things. And what's nice about this with the pencil is it's kind of just like sketched out, and a lot of these lines you can choose to keep or get rid of later. That'll be up to you and your discretion. But I think at the very least, it helps you decide what is like a good starting place for some of these bushes. Like for example, this corner kind of looks a bud. Not really feeling it. So let's re-square that up. Come on, this is the lawful good plane. And there's another bush. Let's do like a super weird one. Let's make a triangular bush now. like a pyramid. Like this is actually in like some magical hedge somewhere. You're in like a glade where satyrs are dancing and playing on a lute or a little half harp. And for whatever reason, the dryads wanted pyramidal D4 shaped trees. I'll actually start with the corners on this one. Sorry, y'all, if you heard that vibration. That's my phone going crazy. I don't know why it's going crazy. I'd love to know. If any of you know why my phone's going crazy. For example, if you're the reason my phone is going crazy. Thank you. But yeah, I didn't think it was pointy enough before. Now let's do more flowery type ones, right? Or just like some flowers in general. Now again, you're going to have to realize that your scale is going to be what your scale is. So if you need to do some more like kind of detail work with drawing like actual flowers, it might help to then just realize that you're doing it in a 1 inch by 1 inch. And then whenever you digitally like convert it over, think about making it half that size, for example. So instead of it being like a 1 inch by 1 inch, when you transfer it to the table or your map, you're going to want to have it either at like half scale, or when you're creating it in the interface program like Photoshop or Adobe or even Canva. I think you can do this kind of stuff in now, which is kind of crazy to think about. Remember that you want to make sure that your scale is right. So I think I had like little four petal flowers. And I think what I'm going to do is have them kind of come in like drops. And I'm going to have like a couple of them. So that one I just like kind of did a figure 8, right? And then you have to draw your stems, right? Stems are your flowers. I don't like that. Sorry if the camera's moving. I'm trying not to move the desk as I do this. Let's start over on that. So let's start with like a figure 8. One flower petal is bigger than the others. It's kind of like an attractor petal. And then it's hard to do flowers sometimes in Arial because of just like depth, but like you can attempt. There was an attempt to kind of think about the angle of those stems to kind of shorten or flatten your angle of of like where the stems meet, because that's going to show you more of like, instead of it being like this, shows you more of it being like that. So that's a really poor example. But if I draw it for you, and if you're in elevation view, you're gonna see the two stems of the flowers like that, right? And then you got your boom, flowers, right? Bam. Thank you, ma'am, right? But if you want to do it more of like a bird's eye, you're going to do those same fried egg flowers, right? But instead of it being like this angle and that angle, and see how it's like super wide? Like this is probably like a 95-degree angle at least. You're going to want it to be probably a lot flatter. So see how that kind of shows you that you have like that same angle in the side view, but when you're doing it into the bird's eye, it's going to be a lot flatter because it's more just along one flat plane, right? You're showing that your Z is flat compared to your X and Y, whereas in the elevation view, you're showing more of the X and Y, or showing more of the X or Y, whatever your horizontal plane is, and also showing your Z. In the bird's eye, you're really going to be just showing the Z, and it helps to conceptualize these things and talk through it out loud, because it's going to help you in the long run make more accurate representations of what you're trying to draw. So keeping that in mind, where the bird's eye view is probably closer to like 165 to 170 degrees. Let's do that, right? So we have this and we have that. And that's going to be our F1 for our first flower, because that's a really flat angle, not a nice sharp angle. Layla, thank you for joining the chat tonight. What did you have for dinner last? Like, what was the last thing you had for dinner? I know you might be in a different time zone, so it might not be dinner time for you. Eggs for breakfast is a solid decision. And then we have like this bunch of flowers, right? So this one, you're going to be able to show that, but you're not showing like a wide angle of the individual stem. You're showing like a real short arc. Like you're not showing this. You're showing that, right? So like for this F2 that we just drew, all of these angles are super flat, and they all come together where like the bottom of the flower would be. Let's draw some more inch line markers. Cool. Again, this helps just give us some reference. This is going to be more of a flower that has more... I don't like that at all. That looks like nothing. Now I'm going to envision something that is... Let's see what I can do here. It's like a Google search of flowers. Let's see what my recommended by whatever the fuck this is showing me. Pickle your fruit this summer. A waterfall? Oh my gosh, you want me to do a waterfall? I'll do a waterfall. Shit, yeah. Are there any waterfalls that like I can like look at? I know there's one waterfall. One big ass waterfall. Niagara Falls, where are you? I mean, if you're gonna look at some waterfalls, why not look at some freaking waterfalls, am I right? Okay then, everybody. Let's do some waterfall. So that is like the horseshoe fall of like the actual Niagara Falls, right? So the way you got to think about it is Niagara Falls is flowing this way. It's not coming back this way. I wish I actually had Google Earth. Do I have Google Earth on this computer? No, I don't. I have it on my work computer. I use it all the time. But anyways, we got photos over here. Can I get the photos? This is just like, I don't understand. Cannot compute. Anyways, you're looking at like a vertical aerial view of a waterfall. So there's a couple things you got to keep in mind. One important thing to keep in mind is you're not necessarily thinking about all of this big fluffy stuff of the aerated water that's getting like aerated and fluffed up. You need to start with like what you're actually seeing. And when you're looking at a waterfall, you usually have objects that are cutting up against one side that are really sharp and trailing off on the other side, because that is the friction of the water. Where's my camera that I can do this correctly? You have like your rock here that the water is flowing into, right? So it is hard on this side. and then it's like coming up over and being like real flowy and aerated, and that's when it gets popped up and or popped down. That's where like the water's getting aerated and popping down over top of that sharp edge. So when you're drawing something like a waterfall or any kind of water structure in an aerial view, whether it be just like a rock in a stream that you're drawing some aerated water behind, a riffle as they're called, you want to make sure that your front side of the water object is sharp, because that is showing the thing that the water is hitting off of, or hitting or falling off of in our case with a waterfall. And you want to be able to show that big flowy wispy back end where the riffle is kind of extenuating the water and aerating it out. That is the froth that you're seeing with these kinds of things. So let's do it. We'll call it Waterfall 1. Actually, for the sake of the drawing and our 1-inch scale, it's going to be right here. See, we got that. Just keeping it with our 1-inch scale. And as y'all can see, I got my 1-inch over there. Again, if you have a piece of paper, like a blank piece of paper, a pencil, and access to the internet, you can also do this. Like I'm trying to make it as free as possible to lower the entry barrier to doing your own work like this. I think it's super important. I talked about it a while ago, and I just want to hit on it again for people coming into the stream a little bit later. So, our hard edge. Typically, waterfalls, as they recede, this is like a geology thing, they naturally kind of do this bow thing. Part of that is because they're creating a plunge pool, and as it hits the plunge pool, it's like applying a lot more force, and it'll erode stuff here in this section faster. What that ends up meaning is that it undercuts and will destabilize this part of the water of the rock face faster than the stuff on the edges. Of course, there's always corner case scenarios where that isn't exactly the case. But for what we're looking at here, especially at the Grand Canyon, or the Grand Canyon, the Niagara Falls, that is totally the case. I spent a solid couple weeks studying the Niagara Falls. So we're gonna incorporate that into ours. There's going to be a slight bend and an exaggeration of where the plunge pool has been eroded and is undercutting the center portion of the waterfall. Again, I'm not doing fluffy lines like when I was drawing the trees or something like that. I'm doing like a harder line, and like, you know, you look closer at it, or you look at some of these riffly areas here. What's the main difference between this riffle and this waterfall portion? It's just the depth that the water is falling off of, to be honest with you. So you can kind of take a look at this and get an idea. Obviously, this is a lot greater and it's a lot more exaggerated because of its scale and size in comparison to a small riffle that might only be 40 feet long. This is hundreds of feet, you know? So, but keep that in mind. Like, still, look how sharp these lines are. These are not fluffy tree lines. These are, you can't even see that. These are not fluffy tree lines. These are sharp. This is the edge kind of a line, right? So what I'm drawing here on my picture is I'm going from one corner of my 1 inch to the other corner of my 1 inch, basically, and kind of cutting it off so to show that that is like the limit. And what's nice when you're using a known scale of like 1 inch like this, if you want to upscale it to like 5 times, it can be a 25-foot waterfall that way. But if you keep it at the 1 inch, it's a 5-foot waterfall and can make for some great scenery in your work. So now that you have that, let's work on the actual fluffy side, right? So you have this part, and then you have just like a bunch of aerated water coming up. That looks very graphic, so I'm going to fix that a little bit. But a waterfall is going to kind of trail off a little as the foam clears at the bottom. So what I'm showing here is just like the shoreline, like a hard shoreline kind of a thing. Like a hard cliff face that like cuts off the water. And maybe on this waterfall in particular, there is a rock or two that are kind of sticking up along the edge. And even when you do that, you're going to want to incorporate that. And like, remember I said everything has a hard line on the front end of a waterfall? This would be one area where you can fudge that a little bit, because you're fundamentally changing the shape of that hard line by adding that extra depth of elevation of an additional rock where water is going to be. So you have your waterfall, and now you add a bump before you go out, right? So you're gonna have aerating water on the top before it makes the fall, which gets translated onto paper. Kind of like that. But again, you want like a hard line everywhere else. And you can add like a couple other things, like you're showing depth of that waterfall, but that looks kind of pretty much like a waterfall to me. Layla, what do you think? How did I do on that waterfall? Let me know, chat. You're full of empanadas and burrito? That's excellent, Zendaric. Thank you, Layla. I appreciate your input, and I put that very high because I know you make a lot of maps and stuff too. So that is very high praise. Thank you. Let's do another waterfall, though. That was fun. Or actually, let's go to flower number 3, because I have the label, I want to do it. Let's do another more like daisy type thing. But instead of it just being 3, we're going to have fifth one that is getting kind of eaten up underneath, and a fifth one kind of there. And then with the beautiful thing about that is you don't even have to draw any stems because everything's all bunched up. Cool. So now we got some extra flowers in. Cool, 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 cool. And what's wonderful about these flowers too is then you can like change the color of the petals, and bam, you have infinite flowers that you can rotate, place however you want. You could even make a single flower. And now all of a sudden you can rotate that, put it however many places you want. And the tessellation is always going to be different, so you'll get a lot of variance. And you'll get a lot of mileage out of that. You'll get a lot of mileage out of all four of these. With these 4 flowers that we just made, you would be able to probably set in place each one like 5 or 6 times without a lot of people really figuring out that they're the same 4 flowers. Especially if you overlap some of them, like you add this single flower to the double or the triple, and now all of a sudden it looks completely unique from just a triple, or the triple rotated, or the triple flipped, you know what I mean? Or you add the single to the penta flower, and you layer it underneath, and now all of a sudden you have like 20 more different directions and tessellations that you can use. So you can get a lot of mileage out of making fairly simple designs, and I think that's also super important and something that I've been learning with Dungeon Draft, because there's not infinite assets that come with the program, but there are infinite angles and layering techniques that you can use to really get a lot of mileage out of a lot of those free assets. But yeah, let's do another waterfall. And this time I'm going to make it straight across. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it only slightly bumped up on one side. And this time, for whatever reason, there is a big boulder here and a big boulder there and a little boulder right in the middle. So I think what you would want to start with here when you're envisioning this, because you're going to be like, okay, and then there's the waterfall, right? But before you get to that step, you might want to consider drawing your riffle foam out. That way, whenever you draw your hard line for the edge of the face, you're already incorporating some of that foam work of aerated water. So there you go. That's how I would draw another waterfall there. And if I'm like inking like the sides again, you have your trailing stuff. And let's say, for example, on this one, you have a little bit more to work with in terms of your riverbanks. You have like another rock kind of stuck back. Now you can draw another riffle coming in. But I don't really like how hard that looked over there. So let's take some inspiration from the Niagara Falls. Maybe the resolution will fix itself. But you see how it like kind of like extends and like does this thing where it like widens out. Like, so this is the boulder that's in the way. And then it like widens out and then gets skinny and then gets long. So in our drawing, we have the boulder. So let's widen it out, let it get skinny, and then riffle that in again. And then add some lines to the middle to show some depth on what's happening, because you can even see it with this terrible resolution. There's like like behind the boulder itself, there's always going to be this little area of less disturbed water. That's just how physics work with water. I don't know how to describe it to you. It's a great place to find fish. Like I know it as like an angler. That's like a thing. So again, you want to imitate life as you observe it, not necessarily what you think it's going to look like. So there's that's our second waterfall. I'm pretty happy with that. Just adding a couple of extra details there. Cool. So I think, so far tonight, like, we've made some bushes. We've made some trees. We made some conifer trees. We've made some rocks. We made some flowers. And we've made some waterfalls. How cool is this? The next step, obviously, would be to ink these and then take a heavy eraser to all of it, get it as white and clean as possible, and it'll just help you as you digitize it. And then remove the white, make it a transparent background, and then start adding color layers underneath of it, filling in your shapes and making your own assets. Then you can kind of save them as their own things and manipulate it from there. And maybe we'll get into that in a future stream. And maybe, just maybe, I will have a guest star in the chat right now help me figure out how to import individual assets into Dungeon Draft. So that'll be fun. What's next? Let's draw something like a mushroom or something. So a couple mushrooms. You always get like speckly looking mushrooms in forests and stuff like that. And I actually just created a map that was like underground where there were like bioluminescent mushrooms. So let's make some mushrooms. Bam, we got mushrooms. What's up, dog? Let's do another one. And it's as if the mushroom got like knocked over or is growing sideways, like off of a wall face. It's a mushroom, but they're phallic looking things. I don't know how else to slice that. Cool. Oh, what's one thing that you always see in foresty maps? Tree stump. Let's draw a tree stump. So the important thing here is you're drawing some lines. And that shows like the rings of the tree. Let me actually show you guys what I'm doing. So then that's your stump. That's cut. And then the next thing you want to kind of show is all the root stuff that's coming off of it. So something that I need to get better at is drawing these things. But you kind of want to like add a little bit of like tree flesh to the outside of it because the stump is going to like be a little bit wider as it like comes out. Most likely from where it was cut. So it's good to represent that accurately. And then you got a stump. Bam. Just drawing some branches, folks. It's that easy. You want to show a little bit of detail, I guess. I don't really like how thick that is. Looks like more like an elbow than a tree branch. don't want your tree branches to look like biceps with elbows and forearms. Unless it's like from an animated tree, and then maybe you do. I don't know. But a lot of times these branches you know, they stay pretty skinny. Bum bum ba dum ba dum. All right. How's everybody in the chat doing? Talk to me, y'all. It's got a little bit quiet here for our Friday night chat. Can y'all see the stuff too? Do I need to like change like the settings on the camera? Like now can you guys see like the details of the waterfall a little bit better? You're in a Mexican food stupor. That happens. Backpack Hero. That sounds like a sim that I don't need to play. Is it just like backpacking? Like you're in the woods? Or are you just like packing a backpack as if you were getting ready for school or heading to the office? But yeah. Making lots of fun things tonight. Where can we go now, y'all? What places do you want to see? What's so cool about this is you can like literally see how big the Mississippi watershed is. And how much we've like engineered it to just stay in these little lines. But anyways, I digress. Tetris Dungeon Delver, I got it. Let's wait. Hopefully the resolution catches up. It's so pixely. Oh, this is good. Look at this imagery, and it's snowy. That's cool. Another cool thing with the rocks, you can just make them white, and now all of a sudden you have snow piles. Imagine that. How cool is that, y'all? So I think this is like up in Canada somewhere. Eventually I would love to do like a snow tile set as well, so that might be in the future sometime. But as for now, I'm staying in more of the alpine spring and summer. I do love Google Earth though, it's so fucking beautiful. Or Google Maps, whatever. Eventually it will enhance. Anyways, back to drawing. I think I'm going to draw another bush that has flowers in it, just so I have some variance. So there you go, there's another one. There, got another one. Just some your old B7. So we got lots of bushes, we got a bunch of flowers, got some waterfalls. Thank you, Layla, for recommending doing some waterfalls. I don't think I would have got there tonight otherwise. And they were a lot of fun, and doing water structures is a lot of fun, and I think you should add more of them instead of just making like a basic, this is your river kind of a deal. In fact, I think I'm going to make more water obstructions, and that's going to be probably the rest of the stream tonight. So, not that I don't love doing this all night with y'all, but I mentioned I have a partner, and I would love to spend some time with her tonight as well. So, aw, thank you, Zero. I appreciate it so much. I love just being able to have kind of like a conversation with people and just kind of like be frank and upfront with like my approach to creating tabletop stuff. To me, it's like super important that I'm able to share that with people, because I don't think you need to have superpowers in order to do this kind of stuff. And I want people to know that, like, if they're overwhelmed with like Where do you go from here with that? You don't have to feel like you're alone. That looks like a thing that I'm not going to talk about on stream. Now imagine if there was a second rock kind of sticking out, and maybe you have like a cattail or something. Growing up. Or two. Even. Now you have like a rock in a stream creating a riffle, and you've now created two little cattails coming up, growing in there in that not necessarily crazy strong stream you have. Call that riff 1. Let's erase this other crazy line, because I was showing angles and shit. And we'll call this one riff 2. And this one's gonna like honestly be super basic. Like somebody in the chat, who's like the most basic person you know? Like the most basic bitch, basically. So then you're gonna have your rocks here. I think that riffle, I'm kind of like losing the effect of what a riffle looks like. So let's remember, you got hard front, soft, and then it gets narrow. And that usually trails off. And then usually when you have a bunch of rocks and stuff, there's like this like little thing there, and that's where it kind of softens up. So bam, another riffle. Oh man, Regina George. Yeah, for sure. Regina George is from Mean Girls. That is correct. She is the one who is like the queen bitch, I guess you could call her. She's just not very nice. Layla, if you ever have time to watch a fairly bad, by bad I mean good, I don't even want to call it a chick flick, because like I find great enjoyment out of it, and I am not a chick. But Lindsay Lohan's in it, and it's called Mean Girls, and it's about infiltrating the Mean Girls, and then flipping that on its axis to take them down, but like at what cost? And that's basically how the movie works. There's a lot of really funny things in there, and it's all over the internet. It's a bunch of memes. There's stuff all over the place. I mean, it's fair that you've never indulged in it. I don't think I really watched it until like years later after it came out, Not for any real reason, just because like I finally got around to watching it. But I will say that there are certain like memes that go around that are enriched, I will say, if you've seen Mean Girls. So I do recommend watching it. And there are some good messages that you can get from it through the comedy and, you know, part of it's also just like growing up in American schools and stuff like that. And like as much as like some of those roles are like blown up and like simplified and stuff like that, you can still find grains of those characters in people that you've probably interacted with. And I don't think that that's necessarily even just an American thing. I think it's really like there's just mean people everywhere you go, and you're always going to have to deal with the bully. And it's like a really interesting narrative of like dealing with the bully, becoming the bully to deal with the bully. And like it's what is that Nietzsche? That's like if you stare too long into the abyss, you can get lost in it and you start seeing monsters because you're seeing yourself, kind of a deal. So I'm like paraphrasing that very poorly, but Mean Girls is like a 21st century reimagining of that in the backdrop of like an American high school. And it's pretty rough to think that some of that stuff does happen. And not just in America. I'm sure it doesn't happen just in America. But there's like a Valley Girl kind of thing that goes along with it. And that's very distinctly American. So I think you could find a lot of fun in that. Leslie Knope, the woman who plays Leslie Knope. What the fuck is her name? Yeah. Amy Poehler. Amy Poehler plays Regina's mom, and she's fucking hilarious. She tries to be the mom that's like the best friend kind of thing, and like, oh, you're never in trouble. Oh, go have that that little drink of alcohol. I won't tell dad, kind of a thing. She wants to be the best friend so bad. And it's also like another lens of like the mother trying to live through the child, kind of a deal. And because of that, you see the repercussions of how the child develops and becomes this terrible person who gets whatever they want all the time. So I think there's a lot to be learned from it, honestly. But I think now that it's 9 o'clock officially, I am gonna call it quits for the night. Just reviewing what we did tonight. We did a bunch of drawing of assets. I'm super happy with how a lot of these came out tonight. So did some pine trees that probably need a little bit more work. We have some like big fluffy leafy trees that we drew. We did a bunch of bushes, and the beautiful thing about some of these bushes is they could also be trees if you really wanted them to be. We drew like some square ones and rectangular ones and triangular ones, because magic and shit. Ones with flowers, and then we drew some waterfalls. Thank you, Layla, for that. Thank you, Zero and Layla, for hanging out on the stream. Thank you, Zendaric and Mike TV and God's Envy, and everybody else that wasn't super talkative. I appreciate you so much for being here. We drew a bunch of flowers. We drew some rocks. We drew some mushrooms, and we drew some riffles. And we did a lot of discussion on like observing reality, which I think is kind of important to talk about if you're trying to accurately represent things that you're observing. One thing, I guess I'll wrap up this kind of meta moment for the night with the meta game. One thing, like one of my geology professors, he's actually my advisor, kind of drilled into us, not necessarily drilled, but like reiterated to us a lot of the time whenever we were doing thin section work. You weren't supposed to say what you thought it was. Like if you thought it was like, oh, this is this specific mineral, or this looks like this mineral, that's not the point of when you're doing a thin section. The point is to observe what you are actually seeing. Like, what is being perceived through your optic nerve? Is it big? Is it round? Are there angles? Is it a specific color? Does it look like it's wet? Does it have crystal faces? Is it opaque? These are things that you can observe and like make observations of. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to identify what you need to, and make more accurate observation, like accurate assumptions and definitions and everything else, if you follow those basic rules of like, don't try to tell me what it is, tell me what you see. And I think a lot of that can be translated when you're doing this map stuff, because you're not necessarily trying to make a map of what you think a forest is supposed to be, but you should try to make a forest of what you see a forest existing as. So it's great to have something like Google Map up, and you can, it's a great way of avoiding confirmation bias, and it's a great way to have a reference and have like a real life comparison, even in like a magical fantasy setting or an urban sci-fi setting or urban dark fantasy or whatever it's going to be. If you pull from real life, it's easier to then take those observations and then build off of them to create the fantasy. You know what I'm saying? So with that, thank you for joining me tonight with this asset creation stream, and I'll see you on Sunday, where we will be continuing our Descent into the Void Season 2, Campaign 2. Hopefully, Dullahan can come on and be a team player. Get some impetus. Let's do it. Because I'm ready to adventure and I'm ready to explore, and I know the rest of us are too. So join us as we get out of school. And Sunday, 2 o'clock, be there or be square. It's where all the cool kids are going to be. It's 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the US. I think that's like what, -5 in the universal clock world, because there's no 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks again, everybody, and it's been great. It's your boy Zektown. You can find me anywhere on the internet that way. T2, Threads, Instagram, Twitter, I guess even Facebook. You just like Google Zektown, you'll find me. YouTube, whatever. So have a wonderful rest of your night or day, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye.